Hello, welcome to the AIX Factor, or X Factor. I'm your host, Charles Epstein. With over 20 years of experience in HR software development and civic tech, today's guest, Hernan Chiosso, serves as Technology Director at the National Human Resources Association, supporting HR professionals nationwide. As a founder of ProductizeHR, Hernan curates insights on HRTech, AI, and agility, offering consultancy and resources to tackle complex challenges in people, processes, and products. He also mentors startups and graduates in HRTech and writes about human behavior and talent development. Hernan joins us today from his headquarters in frigid Rochester, New York. I understand as we're recording this, it's minus 9 degrees, factoring in wind chill. In any case, yes, Rochester, which is probably best known as the birthplace of Kodak and Xerox and the longtime home of the great Frederick Douglass. Hernan, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Charles. It's a pleasure to be here. And yes, it is cold.
Yeah, so good that we could warm our hands over this indoor podcast. X Factor is a climate-controlled podcast, just so you know. Anyway, I really do appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning, Hernan. You know, I have to say, I was looking over your LinkedIn page, and you've certainly had one of the more interesting career trajectories. You went to school in your native Argentina, heading toward what seemed to be a career in IT or systems management, got into advertising, then went into HR and HR tech. How did this happen? How did you wind up in HR tech?
So it's a bit of a long and unusual story. I went to school for systems engineering for a couple of years. Then for various reasons, I decided to switch into advertising because of my interest on the creative side of things, the interest in motivation and what makes us tick. How can you impact human behavior? So those two things, the human side of things and the technical side of things, have always been part of my interests. So as I was graduating from that advertising career, the internet was kicking off in Argentina. That's 26 years ago. I'm that old. So I figured that the internet was going to play a big role in marketing and advertising, and I got back into the technical side of things, leveraging what I've learned about programming. Then I had a job interview in a garage in Rosario with the CEO of at that time, a tiny startup based in Rochester, New York, who had some family in Argentina and was visiting. And I started to work with them first, creating websites. And then they asked me to manage projects. And then they asked me to manage teams. And then, can you find more talent? And then we have the talent. Now we need to build practices and policies. And before I realized, I was VP of Global Talent for 250 people organization with a remote team spread across 10 countries and 3 continents. Now, I did that job for about 10 years, and then the pandemic hit. And that, I think, made us all rethink life priorities and gave us some pause that allowed us to realize what we were missing. And I was missing the freedom of building things and learning new things all the time, which sometimes you cannot do when you're in the middle of doing the administrative side of HR. So I decided to take a step down from that full-time role, became a consultant in HR innovation and HR tech product management, because I realized that I love that. I looked at my 2021 year 2021, and I thought, which was the thing that gave me the most joy during this year? And it was to build some HR technology internally for the organization that I was at. So I said, I need to do more of this that gives me joy. And then I became this consultant in HR innovation, hoping to build the tools and the processes that I wish that I had as a practitioner. So that's the whole story.
That's interesting. I want to come back to this idea of joy, which you kind of put in a different way, in a different context. But we'll get back to that in a moment. It's really kind of interesting. Your long and winding path is reminiscent and parallels so many others. It seems that I really wonder what the percentage is of people who wound up in careers that they long planned. So much of it seems happenstance, reset, rethinking. You're fortunate in the sense that you're a really good balance between left and right brain.
Yeah, I think also one of the things that I bring to the table in that sense is that I am by being bilingual, and I also speak a few other languages, but mostly English and Spanish. My brain is used to translating things. So not just between languages, but within domains of knowledge. So I think that I have tools that allow me to explain technical things to non-technical people and to explain non-technical things to technical people.
What are the languages you spoke as a very young version of yourself?
Spanish, but I started learning English when I was probably like 11 years old, and I realized that I enjoyed it. And then as a young adult, I started to learn some Portuguese and French in school, and some Italian later in life. And I found Italian to be so intuitive to me, being an Argentinian with an Italian last name and heritage.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I ask in part because, it's hard to acquire, as you well know, languages as you get older, easier. Obviously, when you're younger and your brain is still developing and is a lot more plastic than it is as you get older. I want to pivot to your newsletter, your excellent newsletter, Productize HR. In it, and this gets back to this idea of joy, you did a piece that asked whether you're managing HR like a product. Are you reimagining HR processes and programs as products to, quote, thrill your employees and managers, which is fundamentally what a product is supposed to do. You list 9 core principles, including align HR with the business, deliver faster, deliver often, use agile HR practices, make important decisions more confidently. But again, what I really want to ask you about, what I really want to talk to you about is principle number 2, delight your employees. First, what do you mean by this? What does a delighted employee look like? How would I know one if I saw one?
So this is about employee experience. So employee experience is not necessarily a new concept. It's something that has been discussed for a while. But caring about the employee experience and how delighted they are in that experience is about realizing that employees have a choice. They have the choice of working for you. And so you need to encourage that choice through your practices. I always say that a job is like a subscription that you renew payroll after payroll. So think of a job like a software as a service. Think of a job like Netflix subscription. You decide that you want to keep paying for that subscription. Employees are hiring you as much as you are hiring them. They are hiring you to do the job of being their employer. There's an expectation of what working for you should look like. And you need to understand that expectation. You need to match that expectation as closely as possible so that you want to be able to attract, convert, retain, and develop your talent just in the same way that you do that with your clients. That's what for me drove the parallel with product management. You have somebody that you need to attract, convert, retain, and develop, and you need to ensure that you're optimizing their experience at every touch point that you have, these moments that matter, right? And this many times it involves using techniques like design thinking so that you can map their journey and understand what are the high and the low points of their experience in hiring, in onboarding, in any kind of experience. Could be compensation reviews, could be how enrollment in benefits happen. So what are the high points? What are the low points? When you know that, when you understand what they are trying to accomplish, you are able to do the things that they expect You are able to surprise them positively, and those are moments of delight. And a delight, you asked me what it looks like. A delighted employee is an advocate of your organization, and is more productive and is more engaged. Their goals have alignment with yours as an organization, at least for the time being, because that's also a dynamic balance.
Hernan, let me just interject, if I may. You say that one characteristic is being an advocate for your organization. How do you know that? How does one express their advocacy for your organization?
Well, you need to design your metrics to be keeping an eye on that, to measure that. One of that could be through referrals. We were able to build a team. Some of the big hiring efforts that we had to do when I was at ITX Corp. That's a company that I was working for. At one point of our biggest hiring, we had about 40, I think it was 42% of our hires in a specific year that we have many hires were through referrals. So employees that refer candidates that happen to be really good fit for what we did it, and we were able to bring them in because of how well our employees talk about what it was the experience of working for the company. The same thing, some depending on your industry and your business, your employees may also bring you clients. Your employees may also bring you ideas for better product development. Essentially, your employees and an advocate feels that the goals of the organization align with their own goals, and they use that not only to attract talent and clients, but also to help you develop a better organization, because they care, because they feel that it's such a good alignment with them that they care.
Of course, we've long talked about retention and the importance of retention, difficulty in this particular market of retaining your best people. We talk about employee satisfaction. I don't want to split hairs here, but is there a quantifiable difference between a satisfied employee and a delighted employee?
I think the delighted employee is likely to be more vocal, both about the positive things and more empowered to share the negative things. They are going to be more vocal about fixing and involved about fixing the things that are not going so well, because they care. The problem with disengaged employees is that sometimes you don't even hear them complain. They just detach. They don't care.
Right. And they find places to hide.
Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of this, you've long been critical of the user experience in HR technology systems. So we're kind of narrowing the focus a little bit here. What specific changes do you think HR tech providers need to make to improve the user experience?
I think involving more the users and the recipients of their technology, the people who have to experience the technology, they need to be very important in the design of the tools, in defining what features are available and where these features are placed. There needs to be a good understanding of how users use the HR technology, and not just create features because our engineering team said that we could do it, or because our competitors are including those features. Understand how your users use those tools, and that has to do with user research, with talking to your users in a product management, like pure user research, not a sort of a directed type of way where you're implying the results, the answer that you want to get.
Right.
There's a great book called on product management, on user research, which is a very simple concept. It's called the MOM test, and it's the question is that if you ask your mom if she likes your product, she's probably going to tell you that she does, because she's your mom, and she doesn't want to disappoint you,
Right.
right? But
Right.
that's not a good measure of whether she would use that product. So the user research is done not so much by asking questions, but through observation. You need to spend more time looking at how users use your product, and then you learn the most. Because any questions that you ask can end up being very loaded questions.
Right.
You're
Right.
implying a lot of what you want as a response. Do you think this is a good feature? Yes, of course. I don't want to seem mean to you, so I'm going to say yes. Do you use
Right.
this feature? Oh, yeah, I think this person is asking me if I use this feature, and if I say no, I'm going to look like I'm not qualified. So I'm going to say yes, right? So you need to observe how they naturally work on this and learn from that.
No, that makes total sense. It's always been the fundamental problem in any kind of survey, particularly any kind of self-directed survey. A lot of people know exactly the answers you're looking for. They could easily game it out, and they're going to give you what you want to hear. Um, how do you think AI will improve the user experience, or will it?
I think in some cases it will, in some cases it won't. The cases where it will are where AI supports or enhances the way that processes work. The AI can be used to personalize things in a way that resonates better with to create experiences that resonates better with users. But in other cases, AI is applied because of fear of missing out. And so companies are the leaders of the organization are maybe they read this article, or they went to this conference, and or they heard this webinar, or they read this book, and they say, what are we doing about AI? And there's a force to incorporate AI in everything without having a strategy that understands what improvement is it introducing. Is it making things better for the users or not?
Right.
Is it Are we trying to catch up to somebody else, or are we doing it because we are innovating in something? Does adding this AI feature resonate with with our identity and our culture? Like, imagine that you have a company that always prides itself on the personal touch and on the human connection with their clients and with their employees, and then they try to add AI to everything. That's not going to resonate well, because suddenly
Right.
you're lying about who you are.
Yeah, it's interesting because it does cut two ways. You talk about the potential for personalization, almost like a choose your own adventure kind of thing with AI. Mark Vickers, HR Research Institute, just interviewed him based on a new report they did on AI and recruiting technology in 2024. 2025, and what they found is that there still is a good amount of resistance to embracing this technology among HR folk, because they think it is too depersonalizing. And there may be an over-reliance on the technology, and it's not as human-centric as it ought to be, or as they think it should be, because that's what they're accustomed to, given their history in the HR field. Any thoughts on that?
I think that you need to understand what are the moments that matter, where you need to have a human, when you need to have a human touch. You cannot take the human completely out of the loop when using AI to connect with people. So I heard an analogy in a webinar that I was listening to not so long ago, where somebody was talking about AI functioning more like Iron Man, like the Iron Man suit, right?
Right.
So it's something that enhances the human
Mm-hmm.
and gives it a normal, albeit very albeit very smart human, superhuman capabilities. Now, right. I'm a comic book aficionado, I would say. And I would say that if you have two characters in the Marvel universe that exemplify these two different positions is Iron Man and Vision, which is a more advanced AI character, pure AI, mm-hmm. right? So you have these two positions, one where you have an AI that does everything, and on the other one, you have an AI that supports the human and enhances the human. I think that AI in general, for the most part of the use cases, is going to be like the Iron Man suit.
I think AI is the kind of thing that needs to be, I use the term dialing it in, sort of like in your, if you have a home theater system, you want to dial in all your speakers, make sure the subwoofer is dialed in. You need to dial in the AI so it's in balance with some of the human prerogatives and focus that we all want to maintain. Anything we should be concerned about regarding AI's role in the user experience?
Well, definitely the ethical aspect of using AI and developing ethical AI applications is something that should be at the forefront consideration of every leader implementing AI, every leader developing AI, and there's governance being implemented that makes that a first consideration for everybody. I think the European Union has a very solid start when it comes to creating healthy regulations for the artificial intelligence. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 4 years because there's the political shift in the US probably will have an impact on how AI is appreciated and regulated or deregulated. But I think that there's a need for some governance from the perspective of things like ethical use of the information, inclusion, reduction of bias, because AI can reduce the bias because it's not self-interested, doesn't have a self-interest bias. But at the same time, if you train it with biased information, it's going to give you biased results.
Sure. You emphasize the role of HR in AI discussions. What steps should HR take to ensure it is at the center of conversations about planned AI integrations, but also strategic conversations about the future of work?
In the last few years, I've seen that there's a convergence between HR and IT. These departments that couldn't be more different in profile in the past, they are now being bridged by HR technology. More and more of the HR processes are based on technology, which means that somebody needs to be implementing these, selecting the tools, maintaining and governing these tools. So this led to the emergence of HRTech specific roles. So perhaps people like me that were very interested in the human side of things, but also on the technical side of things, and they are kind of like bridging that gap. I think that this convergence will continue, and it will be enhanced if you think of there's a lot of conversation today about agents, AI agents, and your next employees are going to be AI agents and things like that. I think that's a little bit getting ahead of things.
Right.
But I think that there's going to be a need for HR people to become more technical and for technical people to understand humans. In particular, I think HR has an opportunity to be an important part of that discussion, because the ethical aspect, the governance aspect, the human aspect are things that come natural to the HR profile and to the HR field of area of comfort, right? So I think that HR has a lot to bring into that conversation, because if you leave the ethical discussions to people who come from a more of an engineering background instead of a humanistic background, you may end up with some, and you see that every day in the news about technology companies being found to do some things that are unethical.
Yeah. No.
Misuse of information and things like that. So I think that's one particular point. And the other particular point is that HR generates a lot of data. HR generates a lot of information with every interaction that you have with your employees within the organization. Not being part of the, and that information can be better used and analyzed using AI. Not being part of that discussion means you're not going to be able to leverage that information. So it's a convergence between HR, people analytics,
Right.
HR technology, IT. Things are getting closer.
Yeah, conceptually, it's a good fit. Culturally, it's not a great fit. And, one of the projects here at AIX, not just with the podcast we do, the Substack, with the community we're looking to build, is we talk about elevating your AIQ, which is really just another way of saying that HR people need to know what questions to ask to help them navigate this world of AI augmented work. That's another phrase we use, going back to something you said before. It's AI augmented. It's not zero sum, one or the other. And yeah, one of the things that we decided to do early on with AIX is not pander. We know that with all due respect, HR as a cohort has never been very quick to embrace technology. It's been sort of a slog, so we want to actually raise them to a certain level. These are the things that you need to know. If you're uncomfortable with this level of technology or conversations around this technology, well, you need to put on your big boy pants and open up your mind a little bit and learn and get up to speed. So when you are at that table, you're taken seriously, you're asking the right questions, and you have a common language, really.
Definitely. I think it's about being willing to be part of that conversation. I think my theory of why HR tends to be slow to adopt technologies and trends and slow to innovate is that in my experience of working in HR, you are working so hard to try to catch up to the last implementation that you cannot even allow yourself to think of the new one. So it's all HR projects are change management projects. So they are never as easy as saying, okay, we launched next month, done, right? So you have a whole process, and you are dealing with systems. So you have feedback loops, some things that reinforce what you're doing and some things that resist what you were doing. So you need to work all those things to create a new system. That takes a lot of time. And so the appetite for change and for innovation of HR sometimes it's not the highest, because they are still fighting with the last wave of innovation.
When we spoke, you referenced David Graeber's book, Bullshit Jobs. How do you see AI in relationship to bullshit jobs? Will it create more or fewer of them?
And I think this is a book that every HR person should read to understand the value of work, because that's something that it's going to be a discussion that we need to have for the next 10, 20 years. Because in the long term, I think that we're going to see a discussion of that. So I think that it may create a few bullshit jobs in the short term. Like I think that a lot of the discussion about prompt engineering jobs, some of them are really prompt engineering. Some of them are more like prompt writers. And to be completely fair, today you can ask the AI to write a prompt for you. So that to me that tells me that job is not too valuable. Now the prompt engineering is a little bit more involved. You need to understand edge cases, and you need to understand bias, and you need to understand lots of other things, and also the efficiency of the compute and efficiency of the response and things like that. So that's a separate topic. It's a much more involved and much more technical job. But the prompt writer, probably not a lot of value there. But I think in the long term, it's going to reduce a lot of these jobs, because these jobs, many of them, they don't create a lot of value. Look at the case of, for example, toll booth workers. Probably wasn't the most rewarding job to be sitting in a small booth for several hours at a time, taking money from drivers and giving them change. Nobody gave a thought and didn't create any big controversy when those were replaced by readers that read what the RFID code that you have in your car. So there's some jobs that will be, but that AI will reduce a lot of those jobs that create no or limited value. That will require us to rethink what we give value to, and how we reskill and upskill those people that are displaced by AI. Will need us to reconsider what are the things that create value as for us as humans, because there's jobs that we have that are extremely valuable, but probably they are not the most rewarded. Like if you look at a teacher or a nurse, that's as valuable as it comes. And there's some other jobs like finance portfolio manager, that if you think about the value that they are creating for humankind, maybe it's not as important as caring for the health of a patient, or caring for the education of a kid. So are we willing to have that discussion about what should be valuable?
Yeah. Hernan, in case you thought I forgot about Kodak and Xerox, when we spoke to prepare for this, you mentioned the decline of these two once iconic American companies. Are there any lessons companies today can take away from their decline?
I think the main lesson is about disruption and innovation. These companies fail to implement a lot of the innovation that they were developing internally, because they were afraid to cannibalize their existing business. So, for example, everybody, and this is a fact that is taught in as a case study in most MBAs, that Kodak invented digital photography, but launching that technology into the market was going against its film business. So they shelved it. Someone else reverse engineered it, and then when Kodak decided to jump in and say, "Hey, look, we also have a digital camera," it just was too late. And Google almost had a similar moment when OpenAI and other companies took them by surprise with ChatGPT and other chatbots. Google had the capacity to do that internally, and actually the paper describing transformers, which is the T and the GPT, is called "Attention is All You Need," and some of the authors were working at Google at the time. So you could say that Google invented the GPT architecture that gave birth to the transformers that we have today.
Mm-hmm.
But probably they were concerned about implementing that because of how they would impact their ad revenue, which is one of the biggest sources of revenue for Google. So they hesitated, and when they decided to jump into the race, they just hurriedly came up with Bard, which is was a fiasco. It wasn't good enough. It wasn't innovative, and it wasn't on par with the available tools. So when they decided, they said, no, we need to do it more seriously. And then that's when they rebuilt and they relaunched as Gemini. And they are still catching up. They are not quite there yet where OpenAI and other tools are, but they have some tools like Notebook LM that are some of the best ones out there. Right. I've been playing a little bit with that technology, and the free voice generation feature that Notebook LM has when it allows you to generate a podcast episode with your information is better than most paid ones.
Yes, agreed.
So the quality of the human speech generated by that free tool is better than some paid ones. So Google definitely has the skills to be a big player in this race. And I think Gemini has improved and has grown a lot over the past year.
Well, Hernan, this has been a really excellent conversation. Looking forward to having you on personally. Hosting these podcasts, you gave me a new goal to spark joy. I mean, very, very high bar, but that's going to be the new benchmark. Did this podcast, or does this podcast spark joy? We shall see. Anyway, Hernan, I really do appreciate you spending this time with us. Much appreciated.
It's a pleasure, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to be in the podcast.
Oh, of course. Today I spoke with Hernan Chiosso, who serves as Technology Director at the National Human Resource Association, supporting HR professionals nationwide. As the founder of ProductizeHR, Hernan curates insights in HRTech, AI, and agility, offering consultancy and resources to tackle complex challenges in people, processes, and products. He also mentors startups and graduates in HRTech and writes about human behavior and talent development. He joined us today from his headquarters in Rochester, New York. This is Charles Epstein from the X Factor podcast. Thanks for listening.